Warning, this podcast contains explicit sexual language and should only be listened to at work if you're looking for an excuse to connect with your HR representative. Additionally, all mentions of the word women include cis and trans women. For my friends who are genderqueer, gender fluid, figuring it out, anything in between, and feel like this conversation is also important for you, you are welcome here.
Will you open up with me? These pages, they can feed your innermost desires. Do you feel inspired? Are you getting what you need? Are you coming curiously? A secret safe with me. And here you can simply be yourself. Sweet romance. Come on in, come on in, come on.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of Shit I Learned at Conferences. Okay, not shit I learned at conferences, but shit you're going to learn at conferences. That is what this episode is about. Conferences are a great way to expand yourself as a reader with your knowledge of the industry, of the subgenres, and especially I'm going to delve into one specific conference, Smut Lovers, and a little bit of Steamy Lit that had very specific intentions and really built informational sessions around what they hoped readers were going to connect with. And for Smut Lovers, for Smut Lovers, what authors are going to connect with. If you have not listened to part 1, pause. Go back, go listen to part 1. It's great. If you cannot be bothered or your hands are not free to go back to a previous episode, I will give you a little bit of a recap. I went to 4 conferences in the year of 2024. Yeah, 2024 is not over, but I'm planning to go to no more conferences. So I'm saying we're done for the year. The 4 conferences were Wild and Windy in Chicago, Steamy Lit Con out in California, Romance Con in Milwaukee, and Smut Lovers down in Orlando.
I just want to say the fact that Smut Lovers was in Orlando, just the dichotomy of that with the what people usually associate Orlando for. It's great.
Yeah, no, a lot of people went to the parks, but also just being in Florida. And they actually have a statement on their website about why the con is in Florida. Number one, Nikki lives there. Nikki Brome, who organizes the whole thing, and doing something out of state feels really huge. But she feels really passionately about in this place where so many people are losing their rights or trying to be repressed, that having a conference like this in that space and really also celebrating the people. Like, we went to the local dungeon in Orlando. And got all of those people involved. It was just amazing. They were incredible. Master Cecil, I'm trying to find a phrase that can't be construed in any weird way. I was like, I bow down to you. I'm like, nope, can't say that. Can't say that. But created such a welcome, and everyone there. I'll talk about that experience that I had at the dungeon in Orlando. Just phenomenal. To really promote and celebrate and show that they're still here. People who live this life and practice these things, they are there and they cannot be erased. So really mindfully done. Romance Con and Wild and Windy are really geared toward readers with panels that were a lot more generic in what they talked about and also in their mission of who they were including in that space. If we're going from least to most inclusive, I think Wild and Windy is definitely just kind of a generic whitewash of authors, which is my biggest problem. It's also annoying because they're right here. So we'll see if I keep going to them. But Romance Con had a wonderful, diverse group of authors. They had panels that spoke about diversity, equity, inclusion, about various genres, and including various humans in these stories. And I think that that's really important. Steamy Lit that's the whole mission of Steamy Lit is diversification in romance and celebrating diverse voices. And then Smut Lovers has a very specific intention of educating authors and readers and promoting accurate representation of sex and kink in romance novels, really heavy on the kink and of course sex. So they have different intentions.
Right.
For panels, I think if you were going to continue the panel conversation here, that I started in episode 1 of panels are not just a great way to hear your favorite authors talk and get to know them, but also hear new authors talk. You're like, oh, I know that one author on that panel. I'm going to go. And then you meet 4 new authors and you fall in love with them and you realize like, wow, Nellie Wilson, you are my new best friend, and we're going to talk all the time. And I want to hear all about. I'm going to read your museum series, which I have over there. No, I did not pre-order it. She sold out of it. Good for her. Oh my gosh. RomanceCon, the people at RomanceCon were hungry. The bookstore sold out of things day one. Multiple, so many authors that I met were like, I sold out of books before day one was over.
That's
which was incredible, just so incredible. And I celebrate them and all of us who went hungry for those to connect with those authors and meet them. And it was such a beautiful thing to watch their faces be like, I had no idea, I was not prepared. And the excitement on their faces when they're like, I did triple the amount of business that I thought I was going to do here in terms of selling things. So that was just, if you're into capitalism, that was a great thing. But talking about one of the things about panels is you get to be a little bit more niche when you're in the things. Sometimes as a reader, you feel like you're the only person who cares or the only person who likes things. And then when you walk into a room of other people who are just as passionate about PNR as you are, you're like, yeah, I do want to debate the endocrine system of vampires. Thank you very much. And like that is exactly what you want. Or you walk into a room and an author can be like, yeah, I wrote this Eiffel Tower scene and nobody bats an eye. Nobody needs an explanation about what an Eiffel Tower is. It's so wonderful. And you're like, you are my people. You are my people. And for readers and for authors, so much of what we do and so much of what we experience is alone. It's by ourselves. It is not in community. And so getting that opportunity is really, really special. And there's the opportunity for authors to talk about the things that they want to see happen, especially when things aren't being dictated by trad, by big publishers. Conversations about movements in romance novels can happen. And I'm not saying trad's bad. I have a beautiful relationship with various trad publishers. I think that there are books that I've read that really inspired me and really took me to new places that come from trad. But big trad is following big trends. We should put that on a t-shirt. And that the innovation is not necessarily going to be happening at those publishers and those imprints. It's going to happen in self-publishing. It's going to happen in indie first. And then trad is going to follow suit. So getting the opportunity to talk to all of these indie publishers or self-published authors about the innovation that they're having and the way that they are evolving as this world evolves. One of the conversations that I was able to witness was really the push in the industry to remove the conversation about STI testing as to remove the phrase "I'm clean" from STI test results, because it implies if you have an STI, you're dirty. Or if you've had an STI, you're dirty, and that there's shame and that there's a lot of baggage that goes around with it. And it's not true. You have, if it's herpes or HPV, you have a virus. So many people have viruses. It's in your life. It's in your body for forever. And one author was talking about how her main characters went and got tested together. And it was this thing that they got to share and also trust in, or show me a result. I want it emailed to me. I'm not going to just take your fucking word, or having these conversations before their dick, like someone's dick is about to be put into an orifice. I can't tell you how many books are like, I'm naked, you're naked. I'm like rubbing my dick at the edges of your labia. And it's like, I'm clean. Do you want to use a condom? You should have had that conversation way before this moment. I'm sorry.
Before this moment.
And that those are conversations that are starting to happen and starting to be shown. And people who don't read romance or don't really understand this genre kind of go, well, nobody learns about it from romance novels. Yes, we do. We learn it from romance novels. And we learn it from the media. And the media, like video, TV, that is even slower than trad publishing in what they're showing. So no, it's going to happen. Those educational conversations, the exemplary examples of what should be happening in real life are going to come in romance novels first, are going to come in self-published, are going to come in indie before you see it anywhere else, before you see it in any fucking magazine, any article online. It's going to happen here first because it's primarily women are writing for women. And what do we want? We want women to be empowered. We want women to be safe. We want women to be heard. And we want to show them how that happens. So these conversations that you're getting to witness in panels at conferences are going to be really impactful for you as a reader. If maybe you haven't gotten there yet in your reading, if you haven't yet read the book where that conversation is present because of X, Y, and Z, there's no shame if you haven't gotten there yet. You don't know what you don't know. But
exactly.
At these conferences, thank you, stepping into these spaces allows you to diversify your understanding of romance novels as a genre, as an industry, in a way that you don't if all you are is a consumer. There's nothing wrong with being a consumer, but also these conversations can't happen necessarily on social media. We're struggling with it. I'm struggling with this. How do I present what I want to present on social media where there's an algorithm that is going to deprioritize the conversations that I want to have with you all? And those conversations are happening for me. They're happening here on the podcast. They're happening in this space where I can say whatever the fuck I want, where I can have these really open conversations, and an algorithm isn't going to flag me and tell me that what I did is inappropriate or wrong or whatever. Yeah. That's why I'm here on this podcast and not just doing TikTok lives. So, and those are conversations that are happening, I think, in romance in general. But I really want to celebrate Steamy LitCon, who had panels that were asking hard questions, especially about the romance novel industry as a whole. Their keynote in their opening was about the state of diversity in the industry of romance novels. And they had a panel of authors that started this conference saying their feelings are, celebrating the growth, but also acknowledging that we don't stop here. We can't stop here. How do we as consumers use our dollars to promote the changes that we want to see from this industry? Yeah. And that was very powerful.
It would be. I mean, we've talked about it several times on here, how it's definitely improved, but there is extreme room for improvement.
Extreme room for growth, and that there are things we can do as consumers that can enact change and promote that faster. And how do we kind of break through the system or the algorithm or both that's going to keep promoting the same old, and what we're looking for is not that.
Yeah.
And I love it. And there's some hard conversations that are happening, and everyone's going to have a different opinion. So if an author's opinion or a panel's opinion is not yours, you have to respect it, that everybody gets to choose their own adventure. One of the conversations that I see happening is, do authors have the right to create main characters that aren't their lived experience? And that's a very big conversation that people are happening. Like, do primarily straight women have the right to write romance? Do you as an author have the right to have a main character, or specifically a point of view character that doesn't pray like you or look like you as well? And how do we make sure that we're building stories and worlds that show that are full of respect and accuracy? And there are a couple different, I think we've talked about it in other episodes, and it's a conversation that is still evolving. So this episode that's being recorded at the end of September in 2024, what we've talked about over this last year, in a year from now might look very different. But that is where I see these conversations happening, and where you as a reader, as a consumer of romance, can participate and can maybe have a different viewpoint, expose yourself to a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love it so fucking much.
Well, and the cons themselves like create a safe space for all of this to happen, which is exactly what's needed, because again, they are very difficult and extensive conversations that are happening. And if you don't have that safe space, then you don't feel comfortable opening yourself up to new opinions or voicing your own.
Right. So if you're someone who's really looking to be in a room with that kind of conversation, conferences, especially conferences geared toward those discussions, like Steamy Lit. Also, if you're not sure about a con, if they're going to have that kind of panel, you can look at what happened last year. Most of these conferences still have their 2024 information on their website. So you can see what were the panels, what were the kinds of conversations these conferences were really promoting, so that I know for next year. Most conferences don't announce their panels until closer to, because the nature of romance conferences is that shit happens and authors that were supposed to be there sometimes can't, and new authors join in. And so a lot of the programming on a micro level happens much closer to the date of the conference than you might expect if you're used to other kinds of professional conferences. We're talking also, it's not like, hey, the cast is going to be there or whatever it is.
Exactly.
It's potentially hundreds of authors, and like shit happens, like there was one panel at Smut Lovers and one of the panelists got food poisoning. Like,
oh no.
I know. And so they weren't there. Like,
no.
Of course they weren't there. I'm so glad they weren't there. They were taking care of themselves. Like lifes. And so there's
life.
There's a lot.
Need that on a shirt too.
But I feel like the real question that I don't know if my listeners, but my podcasting team is really interested in is, Chase, what happened at Smut Lovers? Can we talk about Smut Lovers?
Can we talk about Smut Lovers, please?
Honestly, seriously, since I got back, it's all that they have texted me about. Michael and Steffi have both been like, Michael was like, so we're going to talk about the dungeon, right?
Yep. He did text that.
An entire episode about the dungeon. Oh my gosh. Calm down. No.
And I'm just over here
boy.
Like... I'm so glad that just happened. Chase's face is so red right now.
It's really funny. Like, the things that make me blush, I don't even understand. And there is a story about that I will get to later. But, okay.
So Michael was excited about the dungeon. I'm just over here like, oh, Jace got to see Ra and Moxie and Nick, and I'm so jealous.
And Nat from Trigger Warning, oh my God, it was just an amazing experience. It was so great. So Smut Lovers is a conference primarily geared toward authors educating about accurate representation of kink in romance novels. And one of the things they do say is dark romance is dark romance, and dark romance is going to dark romance all over itself. But when we're talking about actual kink play, it is important that it is represented not just accurately, but also within the full spectrum of what kink means.
Yes.
And that often something that gets popular then becomes repeated in a one-dimensional fashion amongst books. And the whole breadth of what it means to participate in that kink gets lost.
I have no idea what you're talking about. No clue.
Please tell me you're being sarcastic right now.
I'm being so sarcastic.
Oh, my God. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to an actual kinkster who's doesn't am I wrong? Because I feel like I'm very right. Jesus,
I'm sorry. I'm being so sarcastic right now because you know exactly what book I'm thinking of.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
A phrase that went around the conference a lot is Jesus Devante Christ. I don't know if that's something that I should know about, but like that was repeated by many a human. So
See, and I quote Outlander, and I go Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ.
that is true. Oh my gosh. Sam Heughan can do anything he wants to me. Let me just put that out there.
Anything.
Like, and I mean that like not seriously, because one of the things I mean that not seriously, because one of the things that I really like not relearned, but it's always a good reminder is humanity first. Is like
Yes.
you don't know these authors, you don't know what's going on in their life, you don't know what they actually practice. And for people like Moxie or Nick or Lo who are in the book influencer sphere, like they are still showing you one aspect of their life. As much as they might show you, it's not their whole life. They're not showing you what it's like when they take out the trash. And that we even as connected as we might be to these people, we are not entitled to their whole life. They do not owe us everything. And one of the most beautiful moments at this conference, this is so funny, and you know what? You can take it as you will, but the first day and a half of panels, it was one panel at a time, like one session of education at a time. You got one choice. And then second day, there were a lot of panels at once. And I was like, no, Nikki, don't make me choose. I just want you to tell me what to do. Tell me what to learn. That tells you where my mindset was at that point. It's so great. But the Dom panel, so dominance, they had a dominant panel and a submissive panel. And one of the things that one of the dominants said, and I don't know how much I want to like name drop personal shit that people say, but one of the dominants said, like, they are also a sadist, and that the media portrayal of sadists is often so negative and so wrong, and like, oh, I'm a sadist and I'm a serial killer, or like I'm doing things non-consensually with humans, and like that's what it means to be a sadist. And that it is hard from a mental health standpoint to be like, am I a good person? I feel like I'm a good person, but like what I'm seeing in the media is that I am a bad person because of this. Even though I play consensually, even though my partner or partners want this, that like what I'm being told is that I'm bad, and that's like, show the humanity of me. And also like, I'm not a dom all the time. Like with my friends or with, going out to the grocery store, I'm not like dom. I'm a human, and I am a well-rounded human. And I wish we could see some of those moments. And that just really, really hit me, because often if someone is a dom, it becomes like their whole personality. Like they're always dominant. They're always in charge. They're always blah. And that must be that would be exhausting all the time.
Yeah, and not only that, like there are dynamics where it's not a 100% all the time lifestyle. It's just in the bedroom, and the outside of the bedroom, it's not that way. So you can't represent doms as just a dom. That's not fair at all.
Yeah. We got to see a few couples who are in 24/7 dynamics. And even that, it wasn't like a meek sub and an overbearing dom constantly. There's so much respect and love. And that in those kind of relationships, there is more ritual than we see. So one of the couples said like they have a ritual for how the sub hands water or like beverages to the dom. And that it is a ritual. Yeah, I don't know what it is. We didn't see it. It's theirs. It's private.
Yeah,
but like
that's
every
really
single time
interesting.
this sub does this, like that's a way for them to say I love you to their dom, and the dom receives it and like, interacts with it as love and respect from their sub. And like that's, a different type of protocol that they have. So I went to this conference, and I got to spend time with friends separately from this conference down in the Orlando area. And so I'm telling my friend who has nothing to do with romance novels or kink or anything about this conference. And, one of the things that we were talking about was kink and sex don't go together.
No.
Always.
No.
Always. Like, you can kink and you can sex, and they can be completely separate. And I remember Rara said that. She's like, I have a partner who I have sex with, and I have friends who I kink with. I don't have sex with people I kink with, and I don't really kink with my partner. I'm like, that's amazing and wonderful. And oh my gosh, if you ever hear the story about how she met her partner, amazing.
Oh, now I hope I do someday.
I love Rara. I love her.
I love Rara.
But so I said this to my friend, and she was like, what? I don't understand how you kink and not sex. And it's because in media, and like, don't get me wrong, in romance novels, kink and sex together is sexy, but it's not all of it. And one of the things that the people who were doing these kinds of, who were doing these panels, I did ask at some point, I'm like, how do we show it? Like, how do we, what would you encourage authors to do? Did I ask it or someone else ask it? I don't know. I was on a lot of panels. How would you encourage authors to show kink without the sex? And they said in those kind of rituals that exist outside of it. I text you, a protocol that's pretty normal is I text you when I'm traveling, or I text you good night or good morning, or those kinds of things that have nothing to do with sex. Not like, oh, you don't get to masturbate and all of your orgasms are mine and you can never those kind of things, but
no.
the little things.
Like, it's the little, I was just going to say the little things. Like, there's a moment in a fan fiction I'm writing where it's a why choose, and they're all like she's very much the submissive in the group, and they're very much different levels of doms. But one of the things that she's required to do with one of her doms is when they greet each other for the first time after being apart, eye contact. Do not look away. It's a really simple thing, and it just shows like, hey, I'm paying attention to you. I'm focused on you. I'm excited to see you. And that has nothing to do with sex at all.
No. And like, this is something that really became clear is the thing that I am very drawn to when I read kink is that things that are taken for granted or just assumed in a vanilla relationship are discussed in kink. And wants, needs, desires, and boundaries are so clearly stated. And this was something that my friend and I talked about, my non-kinky romance friend, was that because she asked, like, how do you kink with someone you're not romantically involved with? Like, wouldn't your partner be threatened? Or how do you kink with other people when you're in a relationship? I'm like, well, number one, you might not, depending on you might be monogamous, but it's about boundaries and expressing those very clearly. And it's just different. Like, are you comfortable with your friends? Maybe your top is learning something from someone else and they're not going to do it to you because they're learning, but you don't know. But the thing about it is nothing is assumed. It's all discussed with such care and respect. Ideally, if you're not, then something is wrong and you need to figure out, like, are you maybe in a predatory relationship? Because they happen in everything. Like, sadly, it happens in kink, but also, like, there are just predatory vanilla men too. So don't think it's kink.
Yeah. Well, and it's not. And it's the word you've been using constantly. Like, I think every other sentence you have said in this conversation has had it, and it's respect.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important.
So important. And I think just being around people who do this is like an act of vulnerability. Like, because of the way that kink is portrayed in the media, it can feel so isolated, it can feel so shameful depending on where you grew up and your given set of circumstances. And the fact, and also the fact that this entire conference was people who were, it was like coming home in a different way, and I think in a more vulnerable way than even in the other conferences that I went to, because there is so much stigma around this. And then suddenly you got to be in person with other humans who feel the way that you do and are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. And it was just so much fucking fun. It was so fucking great. It was so fucking great. Do you want to ask me the questions that I know Michael wants you to ask me?
Okay, so I saw your TikTok on the fire.
Oh, I did. Okay, so if you have not heard,
start with that one.
One of the opportunities that we had at this conference was to go to the local dungeon in Orlando. I don't know if can I say it on the internets? Is that a thing that I should put out there? So the dungeon closed for Thursday night, and it was only smut lovers. And it was a demo night. So people who either were there for the conference or just members of this dungeon were there to kind of show things that might happen. And they were so sweet. They were so nice, so kind to all of the lost little lambs who were like, what the fuck? So things that, and something that if you didn't know, and this has been a surprise to some people, is at this particular dungeon, and it will depend on where you live, there is no sex allowed at the dungeon. So no vaginal, oral, or anal sex. That's against the law in the county or in the state of Florida. And which I think started the conversation with me and my non-romance friend of what do you mean kink without sex?
Yeah.
So a funny rule at this dungeon, which I also respect, is there's no glitter allowed.
Yes. I mean, they do call glitter the herpes of art supplies because you can't get rid of it.
Oh, it is. You can't get rid of it. You can't. But it was just very funny. But this is another one of those explicitly stated boundaries of this is something they don't want. And they explicitly state you can't do it here. You will not be allowed in our space if you have glitter on yourself. And I love that.
I do too.
So in terms of a full experience, it wasn't a full dungeon experience. We weren't witnessing scenes. It wasn't open play, any of that. It was demos. So in this dungeon, the things that were demoed were fire, electro, I think with a violet wand, 3 different people doing impact, 2 people doing rope bondage, and wax play.
Ooh.
Yes. And what it meant was you could, and they were in different ways. So even though there were 2 people doing fire, I think they were doing different things. Each impact station had a different setup. You were holding onto a wall, you were holding onto a St. Andrew's cross, you were on a spanking bench, and depending on the person that you were doing stuff with. They had so many of the accessories for the violet wand. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. I was like, whoa, cool. And for the two people doing rope bondage, one person
did a bunch of accessories.
So there was a glove, and there was some cloth, and it was so cool. I don't know if these are accessories for the violet wand, but it was stuff that they used with it. It was really cool. And then the 2 people doing rope bondage, one did a front harness thing, and one did it in the back. So that was really fun. And you could just go around, ask questions. And if you didn't see my TikTok or Instagram, I don't know, it was something.
I think you did it both. I think you posted it both places.
Both. I got lit on fire. That was the one that I could show you, because one of the rules was you can take pictures or videos, but you can't have other people in it without their express permission, and no people in the background. So fire was the only one that I have video or pictures of that I can show you. And sorry. But it was really interesting. Like, what does it feel like? What are the precautions? How do you converse about this? There were so many impact implements that each person doing impact brought their own stuff. So it was, what are they doing? What do you want to try? What's fun? I did participate in impact. I got flogged by Miss Rue.
How did that feel?
Michael, bleep the
I didn't even think that, but thank you for qualifying.
It was like, I think something that for me was really helpful was the amount of thought that actually goes into play that we never see on the page. So there was this dominant, oh my gosh, she was amazing. She's the one who flogged me. And her name is Miss Rue. I sent you pictures. Of her. She did a whole impact like lecture, which was different than impact demos, which did happen in other panels. She did a lecture on for authors, like where do you hit safely and with what? So if something is hard, you avoid, and like some of it is like, oh, of course you do because anatomy, but explicitly stating, I'm going to hit your X, Y, and Z. If I'm using a cane, and there are different types of cane. There are swishy canes, there are thuddy canes, and are stingy and thuddy are the two words that Miss Rue used. And talking to the authors of their different feelings, and this feels like this, and this feels like that, and you don't want to mix up the two. Some people might like stingy, some people might like thuddy, and making sure you know, and you're not saying both stingy and thuddy, unless it's an implement that can be used to sting or to thud, but they're not stingy and thuddy at the same time. Or you all talk about big handprints on the ass cheeks, and that's great. But what I as a dom want is I want them to call me tomorrow when they're driving because they feel what I did. And you don't feel that on the ass cheek because that's not where you sit. You sit here at the smile, the Daisy Duke butt cleavage. So that's where she as a dom, she's like, that's where I hit when I want my person, my bottom to, when I'm topping, I want my bottom to feel it the next day. And that's where I hit because that's where they'll feel it. And I was like, that's so true. And not what I think of when I think of a spanking. Because one of the things they talked about was every single fucking story is like, I'm going to punish you and it's going to be with a spanking. Why? Number one, you don't ever have to have punishments as part of your dynamic.
No.
Ever. Punishments are not an automatic thing.
No, because that can be a trigger for people. Absolutely. So there are different ways you can figure stuff out. No, punishments are not a requirement. And I think that's where a lot of people get dynamics wrong, is that they think it's automatically like you have to be perfect or you get punished and punishment is a spanking and blah, blah, blah. No. 100% no.
A phrase that you've shared that was all over this conference was kink is customizable.
Yep.
And that's it. Like there's absolutely nothing that is a hard and fast rule for anything.
No, because people are not bound by hard and fast rules. Every person is different. Mm-hmm. And so no dynamic, no placing, no anything is going to be 100% by whatever imaginary book you think kink runs by. It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And in other panels at other conferences and other spaces, authors talk about how their characters dictate the kind of intimacy they write. They have a character and it's a well-rounded character, and that dictates what happens in the bedroom. And I hope to see more of that with kink. The type of human you are determines what happens in the bedroom. It isn't just automatic good girl, bad girl, dirty girl, spanking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like whatever.
Yeah. Again, it comes to the fact that you got to have a conversation, because there are people that I have met and people that I know who, like, they're submissives, but they don't like to be called good whatever. They don't prefer praise. They prefer degradation. And if you call them like good girl or good boy or whatever, that doesn't get them there at all. So the portrayal
Kink is customizable.
Exactly. And the portrayal of kink in popular quote unquote media has dictated how most people see it. And unfortunately, it's very, very wrong.
Yeah. If you're looking for books that more accurately represent kink, I would go right to Smut Lovers, the conference, and look at some of the authors who are there. People who participate in the life. I don't know if authors are like open about what they do and do not do, so I'm not going to name names, but I would just say that those humans who are writing, or if you can see who were on various panels as educators, those authors would be a good starting off point. And it was interesting. There was an author that I met, and I won't name names for this one, but they are in their life a submissive. I'm going to just be as neutral as possible, so y'all don't know who I'm talking about. And one of the things they were very excited to do is go to a lecture on bratting, because they aren't a brat, but they want to write a character who's a brat, and they want to do it accurately. But they, as a human, are not a brat.
So I love that.
It was great. For what else? Did I talk about the dungeon enough? Oh, one of the things that happened at the dungeon was they raffled off fetish gear. And I won some.
Did you win some?
I did. And I was staring at this plastic bag full of whatevers, full of like buckles. I'm like, I clearly must have had the most deer in the headlights look on my face, because someone who wasn't there demoing, but is just part of the community, came up to me and went, "Do you need some help?" And I went, "Yes." And they pulled me aside and said, like, "Let's open it together." And it turned out to be a chastity bodysuit with a posture collar.
Ooh. Dang.
And so we're putting it on, and the posture collar went on, and I went, I did not know what that was. And I said, "Oh, I think this is the wrong size. I can't turn my head." And they just looked at me and went, "Yeah, that's the point."
That's the point.
Oh, so it's doing its job. I just hate this. I hate everything about this. The minute that collar went on, I went, nope. And it was so cool. And so and then there was another, and I think by that point, I like clearly was so overwhelmed that she didn't even open my second package, which I think was some sort of harness with cuffs on it. Ooh. And I was chatting with an author that I met. I will not name that. Right? With some sort of like shoulder harness with cuffs, because it looked more like a shoulder harness. It didn't look like it was going to be on the hips for legs or anything like that. But I was talking at the last party, I know, with an author, and I was like, "Oh, you went to the later dungeon session. Did you win any of the swag?" And she said, "No. I'm so mad about it." And I went, "Do you want mine?"
Do you want mine?
I know. So I gave it to this author. author. I said, someone's got to get use out of it. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. For quite a few reasons, which we don't need to get onto, but like the biggest one is it's not in my colors. So it doesn't match like the Jason Reed's Romance brand. So I'm not even going to be like, "Oh, look at me in this color." Sorry, I wouldn't even wear it for like promotional photo shoots. Like if it were pink or blue or gray, like I would have made it work, but it's not.
I love that so much. I'm
so annoying. So it was really fun, and there were also a lot of opportunities outside of the dungeon to to learn to play, to like do impact. I think for things like needles and knife play, there were specific volunteers that were working with those people doing the demos.
Which they would kind of need to, because those are pretty extreme.
They would kind of need to. Fire was not allowed at the hotel, only the dungeon.
It's fair.
Oh my gosh, I got to see the master of the dungeon teach whips. I don't think I have ever been so automatically turned on than watching these dudes that I'm not attracted to them. They're perfectly lovely humans, but I wasn't like, ooh, yeah. And then watching them just like with absolute assurance and like confidence make that fucking Indiana Jones whip sound. Dear God Almighty.
The whip crack?
Oh my, like I'm getting tingles just thinking about it.
Sorry, we're having a pet issue.
Tiger does not like what I'm talking about.
That's amazing though. The whip crack. That is like, okay. If y'all haven't seen Jacques the Whipper on TikTok, that man, he is not kink talk or anything, but he is like a professional whipper. Like he does like, and he will.
Can you send it to me so I can put it in the show notes? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I know some of my listeners will. I know some of the listeners will.
This conference made me feel so lame, y'all. Like, this is a conference where I feel like I knew nothing. And I'm like, I don't even belong in this room. Like, I was just like, I'm not cool enough to hang out with any of you.
Whatever. That's not true. I will send you. I will send you Jacques. It's Jacques the Whipper. Like it's stupid French. But he travels to like Ren fairs and stuff and does shows.
Oh, sure. I'm sure. I just happened to watch someone like at a dungeon take a whip and be like, Jesus fucking Christ.
The whip crack, it's fucking sexy. Like I don't understand it. No, I'm right there with you.
Nat from Trigger Warning Romance and I went together and she was outside taking a break and she texted me, she goes, there are whips happening right now. And I went, what? And I walked outside. Like that wasn't listed as stuff that was going to get demoed. It was just someone said, oh, what is this? And the master, he goes by master, his name. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say these things out loud. So like I want to protect people's privacy and all of that. But he was showing someone else and I was like, I can't touch that. Like I'm feeling too many feelings right now. He was like, do you want to do? I'm like, nope, I'm feeling too many feelings. I can't. I don't want to touch it. Too many feelings. I will just watch. Thank you. Thank you. Too many feelings.
Oh man.
I know. Is there anything else that I said I was going to talk about or want to talk about?
I don't think
with
so.
Sex and kink and romance.
We covered a lot.
We did cover a lot. I am still not an expert on anything. Like it's interesting. So I was having a conversation, and this is where like where I feel like my book life and my real life, not real life, but there are people who I talk about books to, like Seffi, and there are people that I talk about kink to because of books, like Seffi. And then there are just people that know me in the world. And I find if you ask me, I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot.
Yeah.
And this person was like, nope, you know so many things about sex and kink and romance books. And I was like, I know like quite a bit, but I wouldn't say expert. Like, I don't feel like I know much more than the average person. And they were like, shut the fuck up. You know so much. I'm like, what are you talking about? And the example they gave me was, when you're driving on a highway, you are always driving the correct speed. Whatever speed you're driving at is the one you think is correct. And everybody going slower than you is an idiot. And everyone going faster than you is a maniac. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going like, if it's a 65 mile, I feel like I'm going like 72, like 73. Like we're not reckless driving yet, but I'm 72. He goes, no, you think you're going 72. You're really going 120. And I was like, I don't believe that. He goes, you don't believe it because the people you hang out with and that you talk about this shit with are the Fast and the Furious. And I felt like a lame ass. And it was so, I felt like so idiotic in some moments. And I will like caveat, no one made me feel that way. No one at any point was like, you know nothing, Jon Snow. But it also it's a whole different avenue, and they had so many people who weren't just authors but who were educators in this space, mainly on social media. And if I haven't expressed this to you all, this is the moment where I'm like, I'm really bad at social media. I don't understand. Like, follow, subscribe, it's great, but like, I don't know what it means. Have we told the story of months after I started the Jace Reads Romance TikTok, I messaged Steffi and I went, did you know that your For You page is different than a following? I had no idea they were different.
That is a true statement.
That is a true story.
That is a true story.
Like, I thought For You was the people you were following, and I did not. I was very confused. We're past that. I'm still not great at it. I was on my first TikTok. I didn't do it, but I watched someone else's TikTok live last night, and I was like, what are all of these things happening right now?
I don't get TikTok lives.
What are the roses? There are roses and corgi butts, and I was so confused.
That's okay. I'm there too. I don't get lives at all.
It was interesting, but for my first time, like, I'm going to take a page of Rara's book. I'll try anything twice. So
there you go.
But so that was Smut Lovers in general. And what I would love to see, because Smut Lovers is really, in a way, very niche. It's accurate kink in romance novels. I would love to see more educational workshops like Smut Lovers geared towards authors, open to the public, that promoted other things like just sex in kink, or DE&I, or whatever it was, where we could all come together to learn. Because even though I'm not an author, I'm not trying to write a big little book or a book with impact or a book with degradation or any of that. As a reader, I want to be an informed reader. Did this book do a good job of showcasing this? Did this book do a bad job of showcasing that? The same way that I want those things when I read books of other cultures and religions and places where they've lived. Like, I don't know anything. I don't know what it means or feels like to live in the fucking UK. I'm going to take whatever you write as gospel. There are castles on every corner. So like in TV shows, when it's set in Manhattan and they go places in short amounts of time, or they're so far away, like, that is not the geography of Manhattan. That doesn't work. I want more discussion about those types of things in romance novels, where we can come together and have a conversation about it and be in community with other people who are passionate about those things. And that felt really, really special to me.
I like that.
So if you've made it to the end of this episode, good on you. If you've made it to the end of this episode after having listened to the first episode, you're such a good girl. Or you're a dirty girl, depending on your praise or degradation kink. Like, congratulations, I will provide you with both.
We are inclusive at Jace Reads Romance.
We're inclusive at Jace Reads Romance. Whatever your kink, whatever. Seriously, if y'all want me to sign off with something other than bye, like, let me know what it is, and I can sign off with your preferred title or moniker or whatever. And it was just so much fucking fun, and I loved being there. I can't wait to go next year. Got to figure out what's going to happen for me next year. And I appreciate everything that Nikki Rome does with that, and all the people who work to make the conferences that they do happen, because I don't think anyone does this for the money, y'all. Like, no one puts on a book conference because they're expecting to make it rich.
Yeah.
And the amount of love and passion that these people have really infused their conferences with, you can feel it when the people who are there and people who are volunteering and people, it's just incredible. And so I feel so lucky that I got to do that. And I hope that you enjoyed listening to me talk about it. And I've got a little bit of a break before I start it all up again in 2025. That's it for today, y'all. This has been a 3 Paws Productions podcast. Our producer is Sephi. Michael Achenbach is our patient editor. Our theme song is written and performed by Diana Weishauer. You can find show notes and so much more at jacereadsromance.com. That's JAYCE Reads Romance. Follow along on TikTok and Instagram at Jace Reads Romance. If you'd like to ask a question or share a story for the podcast, call and leave a message at 661-JACE-RR. That's 661-529-2377. Or send an email to jace@jacereadsromance.com. Finally, like and subscribe so you can get every episode when they drop. You can also leave us a review to help others find us. And remember, this is Jace holding space for you.